Hi, everyone. Today I'm talking to Joe Weil, who's the CEO of Unplugged, a private smartphone company founded by Eric Prince, and Joe is a former Apple executive. Joe, thanks so much for joining. I wanted to ask if you could explain the history. You're obviously the CEO of Unplugged, a private smartphone. How did we get to the point where basically our data is being collected and there's a need in the market for a product like Unplugged? Did it start with Snowden? Like, the goalposts have shifted in so many ways in modern life, where things that previously would be unacceptable are now totally normalized. So how did we get here, and what is the current state of, like, if I've got an iPhone 16, what is actually happening with my phone, and what are the risks?
Yeah. Well, thanks, Johnny. It's good to dive into this, and it's a big question. What has happened is enormous financial incentive that is invisible to us as customers. So very quickly, we went from a pre-smartphone world in just about a decade, because the real change happened not as a result of iPhone. It happened when iPhone existed, and then 4G allowed apps to stream video and update really quickly. That's when like the app economy exploded, is starting in around 2010 to 2013. That window is when all the apps from Facebook going onto the phone, to Instagram and Snapchat and even iMessage. It was 4G and fast internet on phones that gave birth to this app economy we're living in. And what happened is we just lived through it. We went from a analog world to everything on our phones in apps, and it happened very quickly, very quickly. And the reason it happened so fast is because it was free, we thought. In reality, behind the scenes, a multi-trillion-dollar explosion to the advertising and marketing industries occurred, because suddenly we weren't being shown ads on TV in between, football halftime. We're suddenly being shown way more ads with way more precision on our phones. So basically, a new advertising industry emerged, fed by personal smartphone data. And this happened very, very quickly. There's two companies that we've done this on the backs of, and that's Apple and Google, because beneath the level of the apps, beneath Twitter, beneath Meta, beneath Amazon, are two operating systems. We're all 100% of the world, more or less, is on two operating systems, either iOS or Google Android. And those two operating systems are different in some ways, but also symbiotic in others. So Google is much more directly monetizing customer data, because Google's an advertising company. So it's using the advertising and the smartphone information from Android, and it's turning that into advertising profiles for customers. And you can tell Google is primarily an advertising company because it doesn't sell anything, right? So Google's this, $300-400 billion a year company that doesn't sell us products hardly. Apple is different. It is both a consumer products company that's making a lot of revenue selling us stuff, but it also has a symbiotic relationship with Google, in which Google pays Apple rumored various multi-tens of billion dollars, the news will say this, $30 billion or more, I've heard reports of that, to be the default search engine on iPhone. Additionally, it's also known that Apple makes a lot of revenue from its App Store fees, which again, these taken together end up generating revenue through usage. So you buy the iPhone, but it's also indirectly subsidized by your usage of it. So your question of like, what is my iPhone doing? In some regards, Apple's taking, and I was proud of this work that I did there, Apple's taking a really principled stand on privacy on many first-party services. And I was a big champion of that at Apple, and I was really proud of that position the company took. In other areas, the iPhone.
What does that mean, Joe? What does that mean?
So one of the projects I did at Apple, there, I spent a bit of time focusing on this well-being tentpole, this well-being initiative, and we created a product to help people journal. And it's this application and uh, framework on the phone to help people think of what to journal. So it's like the phone is sort of figuring out, like, oh, okay, I see you went for a hike and you've been hiking more. Maybe a great thing to journal about would be hiking. And it'll generate these smart suggestions in a totally privacy preserving way. None of this information is going to the cloud. And we designed, me and other great people, I worked with people much smarter than me at Apple. We designed this experience where the phone was learning about the customer and making these smart suggestions in a way that did not allow any application or anything outside of the operating system to see the underlying data. So the good news is, like, and a lot of engineering work went into making this happen in a way that was privacy preserving. So I was involved in this and I was like, man, this is great. Like we're bringing AI to customers and all this personalization benefit with zero information leaving the phone. Apple doesn't know anything about this. That's great. However, I incorrectly perceived or imagined that all the third-party apps I used on my iPhone followed similar protocol, which is totally not the case. So the big change for me was to realize that a very small minority of the applications I used on my iPhone were Apple apps. Most of what I use on my iPhone are third-party apps. Those could be social media apps or shopping or fitness, whatever. I use tons of apps. And what I didn't understand, what I've gotten educated on since, is the primary business model of those apps is selling access to my information. And my iPhone was not really doing much, was not doing as much as I thought by a long shot to protect that information. So, what's happening in the background, and our product shows this in real time, is most apps basically exist to monetize where you are, who you're with, what you're up to, various data points, which contribute to an advertising profile, which is a purchasable set of information. And when I say purchasable, what I mean is it's designed for advertisers to buy from data brokers, but anyone can buy it, and one of the most frequent buyers is the government. So there's a sort of, our data, it starts in the applications on the smartphone, and then it follows this like life cycle. It goes from the app to a data harvester, and from the data harvester to a data broker, and then data brokers sell it to advertisers. So there's, and then that goes back to what you're shown in your apps. So we're invisibly funding with our own information this huge multi-trillion dollar machine behind the scenes. My big concern is that this process, which is ubiquitous, is not just creepy, because what I just said is kind of strange, and it is. Like, we've all seen weird ads where we're like, "How do you know that about me? That's crazy." Um, that's crazy. But it's also dangerous because, as I mentioned, the government frequently buys this stuff. There was a great book recently called Means of Control, highlighting how this data, which is not Fourth Amendment protected, this is not like, no warrants are required for the government to buy this data. And this includes, where we go, who we connect with, who we socialize with. Even much of this data can include what I read on my phone. I've personally seen, like, in real time, these advertising and marketing tools where I could go, like, you live in LA, I could put a geofence around your block and be like, show me the phones that look at MSNBC, show me the phones that look at Breitbart, and let me follow them around all day. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So I find that very dangerous.
Where is the point of consent? Like, where do I consent as a user to that?
So this is the slippery slope, and I believe we're so far gone. Our only answer here is innovation, not even legislation, because the financial incentive here is so high that companies find ways around these things. The big story here, again, Byron Tao wrote a great book called Means of Control. He highlights this in great detail. I'll do a lame version of paraphrasing, but in the late 70s, I think in 76 and 79, there were two seminal cases that established through the Supreme Court what's called third-party data doctrine. And the notion is that when you consent as a customer of a service to the company. In that case, it was, I think, the bank and the phone company having certain data about you, you relinquish Fourth Amendment protection. Now, this is a very big deal because our Constitution and our republic are designed around the idea of private letters, right? Your information is yours. And back in the day, they called it private letters, right? But it's basically like your personal data. Um, and this these court decisions stipulated that, well, no, when you use a service, you're relinquishing this protection by consenting to a third party having it. So the point of consent is very blurry for people, but basically having the app on your phone, and by just downloading the app, you've implicitly agreed to the terms and conditions on the App Store page. Now the app's on your phone and it's spewing out information about your location that you've consented to, and that's third-party information, which is not Fourth Amendment protected. So, you can imagine, like, many people might have places they go that are indicative of aspects of their lives that they want to keep private. In fact, one of the scenarios in Means of Control was the use of the Grinder app. It exposed personal choices that people might not want to be public, available for purchase, right? And again, that could go for any lifestyle choice, right? So the big issue here is, like, where are we consenting by using the app? We don't even realize we're consenting to this data transmission. And what is being exposed is basically everything. So it's like the government can know, who's going to gay bars, crypto conventions, gun stores, Protestant churches versus Catholic churches versus mosques, whatever. And that's very dangerous because those are the keys that unlock dystopia, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think of privacy as like a fundamental human right, and part of this kind of spiritual battle that we're in. Like, I think a lot of people are fatigued by technology anyway, and just on the level of wanting to be left alone.
I agree.
In the simplest terms, like, that's the way it feels to me, that we've just, like, so many lines have been crossed, and this is yet another one.
I agree with you that it's a spiritual battle. And I do believe that what we're experiencing on the data realm is a symbol or a manifestation of something happening on the spiritual realm. So I'm more than eager to have a biblical conversation about that. But I'll just also say, like, technically and pragmatically, the founders of our republic did have certain spiritual ideas in common. And one of the core ideas, a core idea of the design of our way of life, is that all humans are so flawed that no human should have the ability to have too much power over other people. This humility is at the center of the design of our republic. And that's not just shown in the Bill of Rights, which restrains government power, over the individual. But it's also, I mean, one of my favorite anecdotes in all of this is that the first Article 1 of the Constitution establishes the post office. And the post office, which is, like, to us, this, kind of hokey, old school idea of, like, sending letters, is actually a super revolutionary idea that the founders realized we would require a way to share information confidentially, transmit news confidentially, which was the original purpose of the post office. Most people then lived in rural areas and they would have to get newspapers delivered. So right when they established the Constitution, the post office was established. Right after the Constitution is the Post Office Act, which establishes these big ideas like opening another citizen's mail is a federal felony.
Right.
Post office employees tell it, hey, can you believe Johnny ordered this newspaper? Like, they can't disclose anything about your parcels. And these are some of our oldest laws. And the exact opposite is happening on our mobile internet experience, which is everything we're doing is being bought and sold. And the risk of this, I think, is so big. And I think we don't really need to look too far to see the risk. There's two reference points. One is China, which is arguably the biggest economy in the world, is living this out. But two, like, I think many of us feel like we just lived through COVID, which showed, like, okay, when push comes to shove, when there's an emergency, people will sort of break their own rules to, protect everyone or save everyone or do the right thing. And it seems to me very clear we're like one crisis away from this information being used against us.
Yeah. Thank God for the Second Amendment.
I agree.
That really crystallized for me during COVID when you saw what you just described. Of like, I sort of thought we were post tyranny. I think a lot of people did, where you kind of like we slept walked into a lull, and then during COVID, it's like, oh, Gavin Newsom is having dinner in San Francisco, violating his own tyrannical violation of civil rights and killing small businesses, et cetera. And nobody seemed to care. So thank God we have the Second Amendment as like a failsafe.
I really share that perspective, and and I think we witnessed government tyranny in shutting businesses down, the double standards that applied. Some people had to follow rules, others didn't. I think we also have quickly forgotten the information control, which for me was the big wake up call. Was again like back to these two platforms. It's like we're living on these. So we just mentioned the deviation from protected speech in the post office to for sale speech in the internet world on our phones. And that's not just in terms of confidentiality, but also what we can broadcast. And that, I think, was, for me, that was the really scary change, was seeing companies that traditionally identified with free speech, with liberty, protecting everyone. First, from like the way I witnessed it was, first it was medical misinformation, right? You're not allowed to say that. Then it was, because it got so politicized, then it was medical into the pronoun, transgenderism enforcement, which starts getting crazy again. Just as the internet thought police were saying you can't go outside, then it was unless you're going outside to protest the death of George Floyd, right? So these weird like,
Yeah,
wait, huh?
totally
What?
logical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it was like, wait, you can't say there's only men and women, but you must call me a woman. It's like, I don't understand. Like, I'm losing like track here. Like, which, so this idea of like arbitrary rules being imposed on our reality. And for me, and then of course with the election, it was like, we must have free speech unless you question how some votes were cast, which to me is like the exact purpose of what protected speech is.
Yes.
And then, for me, the really big alarm bell was, we know all these, there's wonderful work by like Mike Benz and others who's just, he's the greatest, right? And he's documenting all of this sort of gravy train from foreign policy to US government to internet censorship, and how intricately connected these things were during this COVID experience. To me, what really woke me up was not just seeing the social networks and media companies attempting this censorship stuff, but people like me, I was like, okay, I'll just pick a new app. So I started using this app Parler, where I could get information that I could, that was not as whitewashed as what I was seeing everywhere else. That became the biggest app in the world because people were obviously fleeing the censorship of Meta and Twitter before Elon. So Parler becomes the number one app until Apple and Google decide no more Parler, not okay, verboten. That for me was shocking. And I was at Apple at the time. I was living at we have a home in Idaho where I was happily squirreled away with my kids at the time. And I remember when it was announced that Parler was off the App Store, and then Google made the decision right after, and then Amazon removed its web services, and all these other internet service companies removed Parler's ability to service customers at all. That's when I was like, okay, this is fascism. That's what it is, right? It's a government corporate partnership to enforce an ideology, and that's totalitarianism. And we weren't in a republic at that moment. And one of the big concerns I've had is, it's amazing what Elon's done with Twitter. Love or hate Twitter, or with X, it has changed the center of gravity. but we're fooling ourselves if we think this problem is permanently solved. And my big concern is we have vulnerability so long as we remain on these two platforms of Apple and Google that are ostensibly different companies, but have the exact same perspective when it comes to what we should be able to say and think.
What what is it like to see, with all of that in mind, about big tech and merging of industry and the state, to see Tim Cook and Mark Zuckerberg at the White House with Trump and some of the potential backstopping of AI companies after Zuckerberg, like in my opinion, interfered in the 2020 election.
I don't
What is
think that's
your
just your opinion. Let's call that our opinion.
yeah, our opinion.
Yeah.
I didn't want
Yeah.
to presume, but
Yeah.
what is your? I think it's like an outrage. But I just wanted to get your perspective
Yeah, sure. I
on
mean,
that relationship.
I think it's I mean, first of all, uh, I'm very grateful for President Trump and the role he's played in um, representing a refusal to give up, and to me, like him getting shot in the ear and standing back up, like back to that spiritual battle, that was a decisive moment in the spiritual battle, which is
Mhm.
ongoing and never ending, but that was a decisive moment. Um, so I'm I'm very grateful he's president and not the alternative. Um, I also found some of the like big tech kiss the ring. We'll go to your inauguration and write you $1 million check. Um, I'll just say, I know that Apple has at least announced publicly, and this is just what it has announced, but Apple has publicly announced many hundreds of millions of dollars of commitments to organizations that would blow your hair back if you read their website. I'm talking about organizations that are lobbying for and actively pushing to release people from jail. Organizations like Recidiviz and many others.
Mhm.
And this is like on Apple's website.
Yep.
So when I see like Apple giving $1 million to Trump's inauguration, which is nice, and then it pledges $200+ million to what I perceive obviously as Maoist, anti-American, burn down the republic, anti-civilization causes, including let people out of jail and buy chest binders and blah blah, all this insanity. I think, okay, 200 to 1. That I'm a little concerned about that. So I think that um, I'm a little concerned about, again, similar to this feeling I get where we're like, oh, we can speak our minds again on the internet. It's like for now. So I'm a little concerned about the like fair weather friend situation with big tech. I'm more than a little concerned. I'm extremely concerned that we have fake short-term allegiance, and I feel like we're watching an episode of Game of Thrones in which the nemesis, who wants nothing more than to rip your face off, is willing to like kneel down and give you some homage for a few minutes. I believe that generally speaking, these companies represent a class of people who've unfortunately been ideologically brainwashed. I actually know they think they're helping us, but I think they'd help us right into concentration camps. I believe that, and
Yes.
um, uh, so um, I'm dubious about the depth of the loyalty. And by the way, I want to be really explicit. I do not think I'm not referring to Tim Cook personally, who's a very smart, capable person. I really do believe, by and large, the people we're describing who are running a lot of these big companies fully, totally believe they are doing the right thing to help us. I know this to be true.
Yes.
Um, which is, I think, what's so dangerous. I think that we've had 60, 80 years of communist indoctrination telling us, taking advantage of our general sort of Christian worldview, whether you're a Christian or not, but like this sort of benefit of the doubt altruistic worldview has been weaponized with this, under the flag of white guilt and et cetera. I think this idea of like the way we get to be like Martin Luther King today, or the way I get to be like Gandhi today, is to make you take that fucking vaccine.
Yeah.
Or like that's a woman who says is a woman is a woman. And it's like, like it's like,
Totally.
liberalism at gunpoint. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I
Toxic empathy or
totally.
suicidal
So
empathy.
gad
Any
sad
number
and
of
that whole
any number of
corpus of
ways to.
thinking, yes, yeah, all the way, yes. So I do think that that for me was so when I see the big tech Trump stuff, I'll tell you my answer. My answer is I left and I'm trying to build an alternative.
Mhm.
Because I think our only answer is alternatives. Or let me be clear. I think alternatives will either become the new reality or they can help change the center of gravity for those companies, which I also think is possible.
Interesting. And then, how do you, as far as AI is concerned, um, it seems strange to me, like just seeing, you see automation companies like Waymo here in Santa Monica that, would theoretically replace human jobs for drivers. There's a lot of talk of AI and large language models that would replace large sections of the workforce. Um, what's your view on large language models? Like, do you think that that's likely? And if so, why are human beings like voluntarily adopting something that would be their own destruction?
um, I believe that large language models are in the end, going to be a democratizing technology. I actually believe that what we're hearing, what we're seeing, what's in the news, everything we're consuming around AI is just people communicating their incentives. So, what's playing out on the stage right now is here's what AI is, and by the way, this wonderful future will require all of your money. So I would just pause and say a lot of now two statements. LLMs are, I believe, in the end, going to be an incredibly democratizing technology that are a very big deal. And a lot of what we're hearing about AI is total baloney.
It's bullshit. Yeah.
Yes, correct. So both are true. So
Yep.
um, my personal belief is that LLMs will end up changing the composition of the internet economy fundamentally. And I'll explain that view in a way that's very pro-human, by the way, super pro-human. I believe that the vision that is being described, I want to run away from with all of my energy, because what's being described is an acceleration and amplification of our personal lives, data, preferences, profiles being moved from our handheld devices to giant servers that other people own. Another way to say this is the version of AI we're being sold right now is a further commoditization of us as digital serfs in this technology monarchy that we're just sort of subjects of, which
Mhm.
I think is not a future we want for all the reasons we've been discussing so far. That said, I think that LLMs, the cat is out of the bag. It is a insanely democratizing technology that has the power in not that much time to upend things in ways that are very encouraging. So I believe, and what I'm working towards is LLMs on the device empowering the customer rather than the internet companies. So if you think about the general composition of the economy right now, like here's you and me, a person here, there's millions and billions of us. We each have a phone, okay? And the phone is like a portal between us and these giant internet companies, right? Which are from Amazon to Nike to DoorDash to whatever, right? To X and Meta. And the phone is basically like the way that these companies are getting our data to subsidize this giant marketing machine. LLMs are going to free us from this in the end. So I often say rather than LLMs leading us into a dystopian future, I think LLMs can free us from the dystopian past. And the specifics here are that right now, this entire internet services experience we have is based on our data being used to personalize services out here that are then fed back to us. What if the phone using an LLM can do that for you without leaking any of your data? Well, now you've unlocked a huge amount of value because I just that big digestive tract of data to advertising to marketing to sales. There's an enormous amount of value that's burned there, which can be preserved in if you shorten the cycle, increase the personalization dramatically, have a way better experience designed on your phone for you, and no one's getting your data. So I think there's going to be massive disruption in the coming decade, massive, and I'm eager to be at the tip of the spear, and we're working very hard in this space.
Yeah.
So I think there's good news on the other end of some pretty scary headlines.
Okay. And is OpenAI like a Ponzi? Do you think Sam Altman has like in the sense that it requires continuous investment
I
and
yeah,
we were
I
sold
don't
like
know.
human level
I don't know
intelligence?
enough of their specifics. I mean, it does. I'll say like when I have heard, commitments for like data center production that uh, so insanely outmatch their earnings. That certainly does sound a little far fetched, but who knows? Um, Big picture, like I'm just not a believer that like everything's going to be AI in the cloud. So my major feeling here is this is going to be a very democratizing technology, but I don't think it's going to change the world the way some like I don't think we're all going to have smart robots servicing us in our homes. And the reason I feel that is for the same reason that we're not having this conversation in virtual reality,
Hmm.
which is that virtual reality is creepy and so are robots.
Yes.
So I think that what's going to happen, I think, is LLMs and AI are going to make the current things we're using technology for way better. Um, I haven't. My wife has a Tesla. We use self driving. I love self driving. The self driving like yells at me and disciplines me because I like pick up the phone and it's like stop, but it's a great product. I've also had the experience, as great as it is, that it's made since I've used it two errors that could have killed me and my family. So it's like I love it, but I don't think I actually want to go to sleep in the car. And even though here's what's amazing, I am aware that the self driving is statistically safer than I am. So two things are true. It's better than me and I don't care.
Yeah.
So I think that a similar thing is going to be happening, or similar reality is going to settle in. And in the 70s, a roboticist named Masahiro Mori unlocked this riddle called the uncanny valley, which I think is a great lesson for every product developer of any type, which is he discovered that as robots got increased on this continuum of humanity, people they oh it's in, they liked it more and more until it got too real, and then it fell off a cliff and they perceived it as a threat.
Oh, that's fascinating.
And I believe our brains work in a way here that technology is not going to get around.
Yeah. I want to get to the actual device to unplugged. So, what does it do basically? Is it blocking all of this data transfer? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, it does a number of things. It's an independent platform. So it's a smartphone and an ecosystem that are independent from Apple and Google. And in its independence, it makes some very different choices. So one of the things is by default, the phone has a firewall built into it, which allows you to block unwanted traffic. Now, that's doable with other third party server based systems. So you can put your phone on like a traffic blocking VPN. What's different about having it on your device is a few things. Number one, you can see the record of what app is doing what. Whereas I wouldn't really want a server based VPN keeping a record of what apps I used when. So I get a lot more transparency by bringing the firewall to the device. We also designed a new firewall that allows us to get a broader reach of domains that you don't want to reach. So long story short, that we have people testing our device and publishing these things on the internet. Like one recent guy, this awesome guy, James, did a test. He's an Army Signals guy, comparing our phone to a Samsung. Something like 84% fewer calls were made over the day between our device and a Samsung running the same apps. So what that meant is, in this case, the majority of calls that the normal phone was making were not used for the customer's benefit. They were basically apps reaching out, again, building connections with these third-party data harvesters, which our phone blocks. So that's one important area that I believe is very key, which is preventing third-party data harvesting. That's one, and building that into the phone. Other important distinctions are that the phone is physically designed at the hardware level to enable a lot more control. So it has like a physical off switch, which I know sounds kind of rudimentary, but there's a lot of evidence when you turn off another popular phone, it isn't really fully off. It's still traceable. So having like a physical off switch is a meaningful thing, and even the SD, the SIM card tray doubles as an SD card reader, so you can have like local storage on the phone. So the phone is designed based on the assumption that like you might not want everything in the cloud, you might not want the phone fully connected all the time, and you probably don't want the phone transmitting information to data harvesters. So the phone from the ground up is designed to like provide those capabilities. It also, this same technology that allows us to block third-party data harvesters allows us to block things like gambling content, pornography. A lot of people feel like, man, like these phones are not like making my life better or like enabling these bad habits and addictions. So we want to help people in those areas as well. One of my favorite features, because we unlike these other companies, we earn no direct or indirect revenue from usage of the phone. We just sell the phone. We want you to not use it. One of my favorite features is called time away. So when I unlock the phone, I can see how long it was since my last unlock, which I love. So like I get to like, instead of like screen time, which is about the phone, time away is about like me, right? And like building up my time
being
without the
present
phone.
in whatever you're doing. Yeah.
Correct. So these are some of the differences. I would say big picture, the gap is it's an Android phone running open source. It's our whole OS is open source, and we don't run any Google mobile services on the phone. So this is a way to be of the world. You can use all the apps, but not like, or in the world using all the apps, but not of the world, right? You're allowed to sort of, with this phone, use the apps you use, the banking apps, the rideshare apps, social media apps, but you're not leaving the same digital footprint.
Are we being listened to currently?
So I've been
People
asked
have
this.
had uncanny experiences,
I know.
including myself, where you get served an ad and you're like, I did not search for that. Like, is that?
Yeah. Is it possible that an app can turn on a microphone? Yes. The truth is, though, the reality is worse than they're listening to you, because they don't need to listen. This is, I think, important for people to really understand. The uncanny, whoa, it must be listening, is actually the result of a system that indicates how unmatched we are for what we're up against with these phones. So a couple things. Number one, the location information is a lot more valuable than you realize. Because when you have everyone's location, you also know who's in which friends groups. You've also given up your contact list. So think about this. Your location plus your contact list turns into a three-dimensional map of all the relationships in the country. So you knows who knows each other and who goes to church together versus works out together versus trains MMA together, whatever, versus who goes to the symphony together, right? So the advertising companies have a dynamic real-time view of the relationship nodes of the country. So that's one. Then you have topical things that each friend group, which is sort of elastic, gets introduced. So you have relationships, then you have topics. And those topics are introduced by one, location, partially, but two, if you do a Google search, that contributes to the information, right? So now someone in the group is doing a search about skiing or something, and now skiing is a topic. And then the last piece that I think many of us don't realize is how many ads we're actually seeing. It's estimated that at the peak of TV, we were seeing 2,000 to 3,000 ads a day, including outdoor, out of home, newspaper, and TV. Now, just 15 years later, it's estimated we're seeing 12 to 15,000 ads a day. So I think what's happening is, I know what's happening is that, number one, we're in a casino and we don't realize it. So we're actually in a manufactured, curated advertising landscape without realizing it. Most of what we're consuming on the internet is been put there with intention. That's one. Two, this machine, which is showing us this giant slot machine of ads, has a lot of insight into us. And I think what's happening more often than, oh, I just said the word and I saw the ad. I think what's happening a lot more often is I don't realize I saw the ad 10 minutes ago and I just spoke it. So I think it's not realistic that phones are listening all the time. The amount of data that would be getting transmitted is massive, and I think they don't really need to because they know a lot about us. They know a lot about us, and they're showing us so much that it achieves this uncanny effect.
Got it. Okay. And then I wanted to ask you about being a conservative in the workforce now and being discriminated against. I think a lot of people, we've gone from basically, in my opinion, I don't bring my politics to work. It's really like none of my business. And if somebody's professional and competent, I don't give a shit. Like I'll work with them. It's gone from that to then I feel like politics on the left being institutionalized at work in large swaths of work, like social and political causes that have just folded into the corporate world that people are without their consent supposed to like be a part of. And then the kind of quiet conservative like myself now, who maybe has to hide their views if you're a Trump supporter or MAGA in a lot of industries. So what's your view? I've noticed you're very outspoken, like on X and with your views, which is awesome. I've decided to do the same, and I think everybody has to do that. But what's your view now on corporate life, work, and having political views in in your career?
I personally feel like I preferred before politics was relevant to any of this. And I remember that world pretty clearly. It's also true that that world is totally gone. And what I'm trying to aim for now is what is the world my kids are going to inherit? What are going to be the norms for them? And I believe we need to return to a world of the notion that you would try to cancel me because I like some book that you don't like is disgusting and laughable. I do not think people should be excluded from any business opportunity or any citizenship rights because of their personal beliefs or personal choices. And I think the idea that people should have their rights limited because of their personal beliefs and preferences is something we have to attack, ridicule, and defeat. Totally. So I spent plenty of time in a big company feeling really awkward and weird because I would be in, I mean, I had many experiences, whether it was like in groups or with like very, very, very serious, famous, important people who felt very comfortable talking about people like me, like I wasn't human, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And little did they know I was like, armed. Not that I mean, like not like in a dangerous way, but like I'm one of these like, I guess I'm one of these rednecks, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, you're a deplorable,
yeah,
a
totally.
Nazi.
So I get it, um, and I think for me, when it started becoming like okay, I'm behind enemy lines, what do I do? How do I manage the fact that I'm supporting something that's evil, but I need to take care of my family? How that's a hard place to be.
Hmm.
That's a very hard place to be, and I've straddled that line for years, and that's really hard. When it started getting like, I do think that when seeing Trump get shot and that moment of resistance, and then seeing people start to be like, come on, enough already. And I remember being at Apple, it was around this time that Elon had just bought Twitter. And I remember being in meetings of people who because by this point, talking about politics at work had become totally normal. And it was always one way, right? By this point, mocking conservatives or Trump or whatever at work was totally normal, everyday experience. It started slow in 2016, and then it ramped up. By this last summer, when Trump was shot and Elon had bought Twitter, I remember hearing people like mock Elon. Oh, he's so stupid. Oh, he's ruined. He's that stock price of Twitter is. And I remember thinking like, man, Elon is his companies are so much more impressive than ours. Like this notion that Elon is dumb is like the most absurd. Like coming from people that I was like man, like I don't know, man. It had reached a comical absurdity that at that point, the last 6 months or a year of me at Apple, I was just talking about the Bible all the time. I was talking about why I love Idaho, whatever. I was just like, whatever, I'm just going to tell the truth all the time,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to be, and it was awkward, and I had many uncomfortable conversations. Um, and I actually did think, I'll tell you, for me, the spiritual battle for me, the real question was, does God want people like me in this environment? And there's a lot of people who I really trust who have strong biblical indicators saying, actually, your job is to be in this place. This is your mission field. And it's a very compelling argument. Um, it's also a compelling argument because there's all kinds of perks that come along with it. And things that I like. And I think for me, in the end,
To be in this environment now.
pardon me, to be in the previous environment, like um, staying in that bubble has a lot of financial upsides. Um, and it's challenging. I have a large family. I have babies. It's scary to be like, I'm gonna go against the grain. I'm going to take a big risk. Like this has not been a comfortable um, um, situation without second guessing and fear and concern and naturally. But I think for me, the final analysis comes down to there's risk in both directions. If I stayed doing what I was doing, I was helping support a lie, many lies. And this might not work, who knows what's going to happen here. I believe it's going to work. So far so good. We're making a lot of traction. Anything can happen, but I think that the bigger issue is, what world am I leaving my kids, right? When I back to like this, where's the world 30 years from now? And a big one for me was, it became very clear after the summer of 2020, like racial profiling and hiring became a huge issue at work. And for me, it was alarming to realize I was building a company that would basically make it impossible to hire any of my sons. And I was like, okay, this is like, what am I doing? Like squirreling away some extra
For the
money.
good of everyone.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like totally. So that for me was like a big issue, was like, what am I? And then of course there's just the like, what do I think the truth is? Like I found myself doing these like forced quarterly transgender speech code re-education trainings. And I really mean that. I listen, I have a lot of bros who would totally disagree with me. People should live how they want to live. I do not care. I really mean it. You want to dress how you want to dress? I mean it, not my business. And how I talk is my business. What words I choose to use are my business. And the notion that there's some select priesthood of people who can decide what everyone else can or can't say is sick and scary, and we must squash that. So I found myself like participating in these things and like clicking these buttons and like, yes, I will say this under these conditions. And it was like, we can't normalize this. So whether it's the data privacy, whether it's the censorship, whether it's the speech codes, whatever, we have to draw a line. And at some point, as consumers or as professionals, the convenience has to stop being an acceptable benefit, and doing the right thing and building the world we want to have has to become worth it. Because what has happened in the last couple decades is, you remember America, we're not there anymore. You've seen what's happened to our cities. What's happened to the cities in China in this period of time? Not what's happening here. A very different thing has been happening. A very different thing has been happening. So I think it's time for us to make a change.
Yeah, I think I've been thinking a lot about conscious consumption, which sounds like a sort of throwback hippie, like I'll only shop at my co-op, but it's actually true. And making decisions about technology and really anything else, um, whether it's a phone or shopping online or whatever. A friend of mine in the wellness industry created something called empathy economics, which sounds a little left wingy, but it's actually like a certification that she's created for products that are clean, transparent, and made with integrity. So it's the same kind of ethos of consumption.
I love that.
Yeah. And what are, as far as like technology consumption, in addition to Unplugged, what else would be like hygienic from your perspective, like using Venice AI as your AI? What are the other items that you would switch to?
Yeah, I like Mistral, which is an open source LLM that you can download and run locally. We're investing in making that easy for people, so you can just do it on your phone and it doesn't have to be like some science project. So yeah, there are great LLM offerings. Regarding, the technology hygiene stuff, for me, one of the big ones is my children. We have, like, I know it's hard, but don't give kids phones. It's really dangerous. Like,
Until what age?
my personal stand on this, and trust me, my kids are hitting me up all the time. Dad, come on, let me get an up phone, Dad. And I just say, hey, when you're 18, you can get whatever you want. Like, I mean, that doesn't mean I don't let them use technology, but I teach my kids how to shoot, and I do that with like a lot of care. I'm like, here's how, I stand with them. We have ear protection. We have very strict protocol. I treat the technology similarly, and I've had to really increase my guard here, because I think you'll notice with content platforms like Netflix and other things, there's a lot of really insidious content coming. So, technology equals content now, and there's a lot of dangerous messaging. So my view here is, with children, I really, really curtail it. For me personally, I am in a never-ending battle to use my phone less, and I will just say that we are investing and innovating to help with this. So, again, I think innovation is a big key here. So I mentioned, like, we can turn off porno on the phone, right? I'm really excited about this feature we're developing, where when I turn that off, the phone can say, hey, who are bros you trust who you want knowing the status of your phone? And I can be like, yeah, let me put Johnny and, so and so on this. And then when I go to turn the porno back on, it'll be like, you sure you want your bros knowing to change the status of your phone? Like, I think like, for me, that's like great. Or like, how about a Sabbath feature where I can say, like, you know what? I don't need like focus mode. I need no phone for a day. And
Yeah.
I would love my friends to, I would love my phone to be like, you sure you want your bros knowing that you're turning this phone back on? Like, maybe only the phone feature works, the telephone line, and that's it, right? So we're investing in this, like limits and accountability, um, which I think is a very powerful direction. And we can do that because we literally have no upside in you using the phone. Like, um, so we believe in that direction.
It's interesting you mentioned the Sabbath, because I've been kind of coincidentally, since Charlie Kirk's assassination, I started just turning my phone off on the Sabbath, and it's absolutely game changing and transformational. Like
this is
it
the way.
resets your brain. It changes, you get distance and you're able to see what your relationship to technology is. It's like a day for God, basically, and just to be quiet.
I'm really excited to hear you say this. I share this aspiration. I'm struggling with implementing this, and I'm encouraged to hear you because it's similar to the business thing. There's just a right and a wrong answer, and they're very obvious. And all of my excuses are lame and ridiculous. So, I'm every time I've improved my digital habits and used the phone less, I feel better, sleep better, I'm closer to my family. And every time I've allowed the false urgency um, of, service my sort of arrogant desire to control the universe, which the internet is happy to give me that illusion, I feel worse. So I'm really attracted to this pattern. Um, I have friends who really are observant and who really like turn off, and they do it better than I have, and I'm eager to improve in this area big time. And I literally think like I need to help design a product to help me do this because because my inclination is like I love this time away thing where I'll get like a couple hours at church and then I feel all better.
Mm-hmm.
But it's such a slippery slope, and it's very clear that me disciplining myself is like uh it's sometimes it's a bridge too far.
Yeah.
No, good for you.
Um,
That's beautiful.
uh, I wanted to ask, I've got two more questions and then we'll wrap up.
Sure.
Um, what, well, I always ask, like, what are your two favorite X accounts
Um,
that maybe
I
aren't super
re-
popular?
um okay, so a very popular one that I've liked for a long time is Mike Cernovich. I really appreciate a lot of his takes on
Mm-hmm.
many things. I think he's taken some really principled stands and has a coherent worldview in ways that a lot of other people have taken easy way out. Um, less, not as super huge, but I love Dale Stark, he's a A-10 pilot veteran. He's a really great guy. He actually has a podcast. I went up and visited him in Oregon he has like a ranch in coastal Oregon. It's like amazing. And he's excellent and fun. And I think representative of this awesome new, I think it's great that we have this incredible crop of veterans who are helping kind of revitalize our thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Um, um, and I'm a big fan of like the R.C. Sproul would say type Christian daily meditation type X accounts. So like I subscribe to a lot of these like biblical tidbit type
Cool. Yeah.
type
I'm
things.
like religion curious. I've
Yeah,
become religion curious.
uh, uh,
Um,
I'm with you.
what so I guess last question, which is kind of a big one on the economy and the golden era, quote unquote. You guys are manufacturing in the US, right?
We are
Or
moving
you're moving
manufacturing to
and
the U.S. So we
manufacturing
were
in the US.
manufacturing in Indonesia. Our next production line will be in the U.S. And we are literally just in the final stages of assembling the components for our next production line. So, yeah, we're in the process, and I'm very excited.
Cool. And do you see from a more macro perspective for people who are conservatives or don't want to work in woke industries or institutions, do you see a lot of investments and a lot of entrepreneurship in your world?
Um, yes, yeah. I mean, yes and no. I think that the real thing that's going to move the needle is us making different choices as consumers. And that's going to be the thing that moves the needle. There was a big wave of investing in like parallel economy stuff, things like Rumble and other things. I'm I personally think that the way to change the composition is through innovation. I don't think we should rely on like morality-based investing, because my sense is that if we don't do a better job and make better products, the inertia of convenience will just continue to bring us back to this lowest common denominator. So I think that it's going to be a mixture of things. I'm excited to see all these big deals being made, and I hear announcements about trillions of dollars and all of this stuff. I have personally yet to see that materialize as like, oh great, a new American company trying to build in America. Let's make that easy. I would be excited if someone were to reach out with such a enthusiasm, but we're finding that it's just a grind, right? It's and it should be. It's a grind though. I will tell you a big area that we're confronting is that as a country we have completely financed the installation of the smartphone production system into our biggest adversary. So the most ubiquitous product in the world, we have paid for its development and design and innovation, and we've made a production line that or a supply chain that produces this under the almost total control of our major adversary. And the process of trying to just bring assembly here, let alone component procurement, just assembly, is shockingly complicated because there's really no one in the United States who knows how to put together smartphones en masse. So we're bringing that expertise here. We're rolling up our sleeves and just doing it. But it's going to be a climb, and I think the trick right now is building the community of people who want to get behind it, who want to partner with us as investors, as customers, to make this happen. Because I believe how a product is made, like you were describing your friend's sort of ethos, I believe how a product is made can become part of the product itself. And I think Americans would love to go to a website and see, content where it's like, hey, I'm Bill. I put the camera module in your camera. If there's a problem, send it back. We'll fix it. And you can just tell that Bill is able to like live a normal life